think there was yeah, because I often watch these things on iPlayer and I go and have a look for things on iPlayer because you do get the quirky films that you missed completely when they came out. So this one, it's a couple of years old, but I had completely missed it. But basically, it's really that I've never saw it before. And I came across, I thought, why didn't I know about this one? But yeah, it's a little film. I think it was broadcast and it's streaming to coincide with the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. So people are looking at this sort of heritage. And unlike most stories that dwell on the actual events of the war years, this is like, okay, what happened next? And this is what happened next for a group of children who were basically orphaned, rendered homeless, rendered just emotionally sort of bereft, as well as, sort of, and these are the children who had grown up in concentration camps. Some of them had been imprisoned for their whole lives. Or their formative years were in concentration camps. And this is a story based on the true events of a group of children. The British government took in 730 something orphans who were liberated from the camps, where they were unable to identify any living relatives for them. And so they were trying to find a way. They didn't just want to sort of take these children and go, okay, here's this problem child, or here's this troubled child, let's give them to a family and you're on your own. They introduced what's called the Windermere project, was to sort of try to introduce these children into sort of British way of life by teaching them English and by all might socialise them, giving them social skills. So they were teaching them English, how to eat without thinking that someone's going to steal your food, how to have things that belong to you. So they gave them all their own clothes. They could choose their own clothes. They gave them their own bedrooms. They tried to teach them sports, and then slowly introduce them into sort of other people who outside of their experience, because often they were so disconnected to the way society behaves that they were just not fit almost to just be left out into sort of the wider world, because it's completely outside of their own whole experience. And so they need to be together, but they need to obviously be sort of learn these lessons. So it's a story, principally it focuses on the first group of these children who came to the Windermere. It's like an old army base where they've got like barracks, but they basically had individual rooms, so they had classrooms and dining rooms and playing fields. And they had Lake Windermere at the bottom of the road, and they had the woods, so they could.
So in the Lake District.
In the Lake District in England. So yes, it mainly focuses on 5 children, 5 boys who are now in their teenage years, but they've spent more or less their entire lives in either imprisonment or in the concentration camps. They're all Polish. And it's their journey over a couple of months of how they go from being sort of barely functioning to how they begin to think, okay, there is going to be life outside of this experience, and how to take their experiences but to shape them in a way that they can live with it rather than always living in that place. It's like, you're always going to carry these memories with you, but they don't have to define you. And so it's a story of these 5 boys who have this unenviable connection in that they were all orphans, they were all raised in this way, and they all have this sort of trauma of surviving when all the people around them didn't. And some of them said, they had to steal food from people who were weaker than them in order for them to survive, and sort of taking that into their lives. And you see the teachers and the people who they have like psychologists, they have either just like a gym teacher, they have doctors, they have people there who to help them. And it's a story of how they've taken these damaged children and giving them a future.
Okay, so to ask what feels like a bit of a Sharon question, is there anybody recognizable? Did you recognize anybody in the film?
Ian Glenn plays the Scottish gym teacher. He's the only, and then there's Romeo Garrett, one of the teachers.
Okay, yeah.
And
Ian Glenn, who I confused for a second with Ian McNeice. And I was like, I thought he died. But no, Ian Glenn is Game of Thrones. He was Ser Jorah in Game of Thrones.
He was Ser Jorah in Game of Thrones. Lovejoy, and he's in Silo as well. Quite recently.
Yes, he's in Silo, yeah.
And Romeo Garai is in it as well. She plays a German teacher who's trying to sort of help the children. So, because and then you've got other people who sort of adults who've been through that experience who sort of try to help them from their perspective. They're either teachers or they're social workers. They work with children, and they sort of help them sort of foster some of these children. And yeah, so apart from, but you wouldn't recognise. I would say 90% of the cast you probably wouldn't recognise. But yeah, those two you do.
So, what did you think of the film then?
I thought it was interesting. It's based on a true story, and it's it's not a spoiler, but the group of 5 that you actually focus on, it's based on their lives because they became lifelong friends, and all of them stayed in Britain. All of them made careers. One of them was knighted when he was older. 2 of them like formed businesses together, and you see them when they were teenagers, and then you see the real men in their 80s and 90s as they've forged this friendship together. And so it's sort of hopeful in that they came out of this awful situation, but they still found each other, and also they had a future, and they forged a future. So yeah, I thought it was well acted. A few times I thought it's a little bit clumsy in some places. Like sort of they had a few interactions with the local people. One of them was like a woman who was really sort of, I thought she was like a stereotype really of like what you'd think an uptight British person would be like, not in my backyard, they're all thieves, they're all robbers, it was a little bit stereotypical, and you're thinking, I'm sure there's some nice people who sort of said, you know what, we welcome you, but you always meet the horrible ones. So there was one lady who's a little bit standoffish and was more worried about her dog than she was about what the trauma these children have gone through. And there's a couple of local lads who were like, would do Nazi salutes at these kids, teasing them, and you're thinking, I'm sure they weren't all horrible, these locals. Some of those I thought fell into stereotype, but it needed to be done just to highlight the trauma these children have gone through. And even though the people have been through war in Britain, you couldn't really compare the wartime experience with those of these children.
It reminds me of, there was a documentary on Netflix called 5 Came Back, and it was about these 5 legendary Hollywood directors and what efforts they did during the Second World War. And there's a film called, I think it's Mrs. Miniver. Mrs. Miniver. Yes.
I know Mrs. Miniver. I read the book as well.
Yeah, with William Wyler. And I think I'm getting the right film, but there's a scene in it where they have like a German who ends up in a farmhouse with the title character. Yeah. And when they were making the film, people were saying, "Oh, but people were like, but all Germans are evil. You can't just make the German evil and all that kind of stuff." And the director ended up saying, "Look, I only have one German in this film, and if it was like I only have one German in this film, and with what's going on in the world right now, I need to show that this is the reality of what we're dealing with in world situation right now. So I'm going to make this German evil." And he actually said it, and it makes you think a little bit like what you were saying. It's like, well, we only have 5 minutes of screen time, and we're going to have these kids and everything like that. We need to drive home that this kid's had it bad, so we're going to do this. But anyway, that being said, how many stars would you give the Windermere Children?
I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. The fact that it was based on a true story and enhanced it a little bit. And yeah, I thought, well, worth a watch. But I'd give it a strong 3. I think it was quite a simply told story. Yeah, it was interesting. I enjoyed it, but it didn't sort of elevate it into sort of anything more than a good couple of hours to watch. So I'd give it a strong 3, but yeah, 3. It's a 3 film.
All right, cool. That is 3 stars for the Windermere. Sounds very sort of like indie British. And now we go back over to... Yeah, okay.